So a lot of guys ask me about relationship maintenance. How do you get into the right relationship? How do you make it the relationship you want it to be? And probably the single biggest tip I can give you is boundaries. How do you set them? Where do you set them? Why do you set them, etc. And specifically, you want to set boundaries in terms of your behavior, her behavior, in terms of the expectations for the relationship, and you also want to set boundaries in terms of time. So I'm going to crack into all that right now. There are basically three major reasons why it's absolutely critical that you set boundaries. Okay, the first of these reasons is value. Okay, if you don't set boundaries, if you don't have standards of behavior, if you don't have sort of metrics that she can live up to, etc., she's gonna wonder about you. She's gonna wonder, do you not have any standards? Am I even really special? Would he just go with any girl? Does he even have any values? Does he know who he is, etc., right? So having standards reflects to the girl that you know who you are, you know what you want, and that you wouldn't go with just any girl. And what this does for her is it makes it a narrative that's positive in her mind. Right? If she's with a guy with standards, she thinks she's winning and getting the selective guy. If she's with a guy with no standards, she thinks she's just essentially an easy slut, okay? So essentially, it's very important in terms of the dynamic in her head that you have certain values you ask her to live up to. And this can be things like, I don't accept certain behaviors from you. Or when we have plans, you're on time and you don't waste my time. Any of those kind of things, right? It can also be in terms of what is the relationship, what does the relationship mean, that kind of a thing, okay? So that's what you really want to be doing, is having a value system, because A, it's gonna help you, but also it's gonna help her in her experience, all right? The next ones, which are very much for you, are sanity and sustainability, okay? You need to be in a relationship that's healthy and good for you. No matter how hot the girl is, no matter how good the sex is. If you hate the day-to-day of the relationship, if you hate the fact that she's bitching at you, nagging you, if you hate the type of things that she does with your time and her time and wasting your time, taking away from your business, whatever, it's not gonna be a healthy, good relationship, all right? So you need to very early on, first of all, go into a relationship knowing what you want. It's a good idea before you even get into a relationship to say, this is the type of relationship I want, this is what I will tolerate, this is what I won't tolerate, all right? And then stick to it. It's for your own sanity, because I promise it's so easy when the girl's really hot and you really like her, and during that honeymoon phase, it's so easy to be like, oh, I'll just bend this little rule here. And then 3 months later, when you've established that expectation, then she keeps bending it and you hate your life, okay? So important for your sanity and for the sustainability of the relationship. You have got to set those boundaries absolutely early, and you have to make sure they're ones you can live with. Remember, it's a lot easier to establish a boundary than it is to change it. Once you've established an expectation, girls will not let you change it, especially if it's away from more intimacy or if it's away from them having more freedom, right? They do not want to change that stuff. So if you want certain rules in the relationship, if you need certain things in your life so that you can function business-wise, if you need to wake up at a certain time in the morning, if you need to be in the gym, or if there are certain behaviors that just offend you and you won't tolerate them, let them know ASAP. It's for your sanity and it's for the sustainability, because here's what will happen, and this is what does happen in so many relationships, okay? You make one little concession that doesn't seem to matter. And then because you made that one, you make one other little concession, you make another little concession. And the girl, each step along the way, thinks that she wants that concession. She thinks that's making the relationship better for her. But in the end, what happens is she stops respecting you, and you start hating it and start resenting her, and the relationship implodes. And so nobody wins. Even though it seems like you're just compromising and making peace, and she seems like she's winning because she's getting what she wants, in the end of the day, what you're doing is destroying the relationship, okay? So for sanity and sustainability, set those precedents, set those boundaries, and set them early. Finally, and this is kind of an interesting one, another reason why I think it's so important to have your boundaries is what I call training. Okay, and the idea here is women, actually people in general, but women specifically, are very flexible, right? There are a lot of different types of relationships you could have. You could have monogamous or non-monogamous relationships. You could have relationships where you're the breadwinner or where she's the breadwinner. You have all these different things, and none is necessarily better or worse than the other. People will be flexible to a lot of them, but you have to let them know what you expect from them. It's not fair to expect someone to follow your rules if you haven't let them know what your rules are. It's not fair to ask them to follow your rules if you don't know what your rules are, okay? So whatever the type of relationship you want, if you're high enough value and she likes you enough, she'll probably be okay with that type of relationship, but you have to let her know. You have to indicate to her what is proper behavior. And I'll say this from the very start when I'm meeting a girl, right? I want girls that are very like adventurous and like spontaneous and that kind of stuff. So I'll say stuff like, if you're the type of girl who like never turned a paper in late in school, we're not gonna get along. So I established the precedent, I established the values I want her to live up to, the values I know I live up to very, very early on. Not just so she'll follow them, but so she actually even knows what I want her to follow, right? I'm essentially training her to be the type of girlfriend I want. I could train a girl to be monogamous. I could train a girl to be an open relationship, but the way I would interact from day one all the way through the relationship is different, and she needs to be trained to know what I want so that she can fulfill it. And if she likes me, she'll want to do that. So now you know the types of boundaries you need to set, and you know why it's so important. But in reality, what's gonna happen? You're gonna be put under pressure. There's gonna be that heat of the moment, and she's gonna be like testing you in some way, and you're gonna need to hold your boundary under stress, under pressure. So how do you do it? What can you keep in mind? What behaviors can you adopt in order to make sure that you hold this frame that's gonna be good for you and good for the relationship? And that's actually the first part, is realize that it is good for the relationship. Realize that even when the girl is asking you to give in on something, she's asking you to bend and break your boundaries. You think you're being nice to her. You're not. If you bend your boundaries, you are not being nice to her, because what's gonna happen? Either A, she's gonna stop respecting you and that's gonna hurt the relationship, or you're gonna end up in a relationship where you're unhappy and you're gonna have to end it. So for the good of the relationship, you keep the boundaries, right? Sometimes you need a little tough love. Sometimes you just gotta stand your ground for the good of it. Next, remember, women are always gonna be testing you. Always. It's their nature, okay? Women are supposed to test men to make sure they're with the right man. Women are supposed to negotiate relationships to make sure they're getting the best possible deal. So they are always gonna be testing you. So when you get tested, don't take it personally. Realize it's normal. In fact, realize it means she cares about the relationship and she loves you. Change that frame in your head. Don't get defensive, don't get personal about it. And that's actually the next point, which is do not get reactive. Do not get reactive, okay? You need to stay proactive, you need to stay positive, and understand that it's not about winning and losing, it's about winning and winning. If you set up a situation where you're reactive or you're fighting to the point that for you to win, she has to lose, then everybody loses and the relationship is destroyed, okay? So you need to make a win-win solution, and the first part of that is not setting up a situation where you're in fear of loss, where you're reacting and you're getting negative emotionally, okay? So you need to stay very, very positive about all of that. So we just talked about not being reactive. The next point is to be proactive. You may have heard this phrase, an ounce of prevention beats a pound of cure. It's used in sports medicine in particular, right? The idea is it's better to put a little splint on something and keep it from breaking than it is to deal with it with a big cast once it's broken, all right? What do I mean here? I mean, it's much easier to set your boundaries up front, and it's much easier not to give in a little bit and have to fix it later. Okay, there's this kind of story, it's a classic story of the camel and the tent, right? So there's this guy in the tent in the desert, the camel puts his foot in, like, it's cold, can I just put my feet in the tent? The guy's like, sure, it's just the feet. It's like, can I just put my leg? It's a little cold. And he keeps asking and asking. By the end of the night, the camel's in the tent and the dude's outside freezing, okay? That's what'll happen in a relationship if you don't watch out. Okay, that's what will happen. The girl asks for one little thing, it seems like not a big deal. She'll ask for another little thing, seems like not a big deal, and pretty soon you're in a relationship you don't like and you have to get out of. All right, much better that first little moment where you sense the precedent, that first little moment where you're like, this doesn't sit right with me. Very important to set the boundary right then. Even if it seems a little harsh, even if it seems a little unreasonable, it's much better to tell the camel no to putting his foot in the tent than it is to deal with it once the camel's halfway in and has gotten really comfortable with it. Okay, very, very important. An ounce of prevention beats a pound of cure. Set the relationship up the right way rather than having to fix it later. When you get that first little inkling of a bad precedent, stop it right there instead of letting it unfold and get worse and worse. Okay, very, very important. Finally, and this is super critical and this overarches everything, all right? If you want to be able to set boundaries, you have to come from the right frame in a relationship. If you believe you're lucky to be with the girl and you're like, lower value than her and you'll never get a girl like her, you will not be able to set boundaries because when push comes to shove, you're gonna back down because you're afraid of losing it, okay? You need to be abundant. You need to know that no girl is going to fundamentally change your success with women, okay? Even if it was a girl you married, didn't fundamentally change your success, because if you hadn't married her, you would have married a different girl of equal caliber. It would have been a different life, but it still would have been a good life. So understand that, okay? Understand abundance and self-reliance, where if you earned the girl in the first place, then you're gonna keep her. If you didn't earn her in the first place, you're never gonna keep her anyway, so it doesn't really matter, all right? Be abundant, realize there's other girls out there, and be self-reliant, believing you can get them. As soon as you believe you can't walk away, you lose all negotiating power and you lose all power to set boundaries. And that is the beginning of the end. Because as soon as you don't set those boundaries, relationship gets worse and worse until it eventually dies, okay? So you have to be abundant. And that's actually why learning pickup and learning to be good with women is so important, even if you just want a relationship. It's so important because that mentality of abundance makes the relationship better and healthier, all right? So what are the takeaways? Boundaries, super, super critical. You need to set them in terms of the behaviors, you need to set them in terms of the relationship expectations, and you need to set them in terms of time, where you're spending your time, where you are, all right? You need to understand it's for the good relationship. You need to understand you have to be willing to walk away. You need to understand setting them up front is so much better than fixing them after the fact, all right? So when you think about relationship, think about what are the boundaries? What are you comfortable with? What are you not comfortable with? And stand your fucking ground. I promise it will pay off in the long run.